So, I'm going to interview you about your starter story. So, hello, I'm Bill Fairman. Who are you and what business did you start? Hi, I'm Bill Fairman. And along with Wendy Sweet, my sister and business partner, we started a company called Carolina Hard Money. And what the business does is that they lend money. So, the main business, the flagship part of our business, is lending money to small businesses that are real estate investor centric. They either buy houses that need to be fixed up to sell or they need to be fixed up so they can be rented. We also do custom builder loans so they can build a home from scratch. Generally, it's going to be single family homes, and we do some multifamily, but it's generally single family homes. What kind of measurement are you using to um, show how productive you've been since you started the business? It could be monetary, it could be units, uh, either way. Well, when we started in business, we were happy to do, I would say, somewhere in the neighborhood of a couple of $1 million a month in total loans. Now we're doing 4 to 8 million per month in loans, which is really good for a small company that has only been in business for a short period of time. Bill, what's your backstory? How did you get started? How did you come up with the ideas of loaning money? Very good question, Bill. I've been in the mortgage business for over 30 years. During the 2008 crash, I had to get into a different industry as the business that I was in had shrunk to about 25% of its size. So I was in the transportation business. I drove a tractor trailer for about a year and a half. My sister, who was also in the mortgage industry, had been doing loans on the side, and she started doing so many that she needed help and asked me to join her. And then we formed this company, Carolina Hard Money. How did you know that this was the right idea at the moment? That's another good question. Thanks to the Dodd-Frank Act and the fact that banks had to have higher reserves for lender or for lending money, they needed to have a higher reserves for loan losses. The small business person was actually kind of kicked out. They weren't lending to small businesses because they couldn't afford to. I don't blame them. The required reserves, and I'll give you an example. They had to have 7 times uh, losses. So, in other words, if they loaned you $100,000 and the loan went bad, the reserves that they were requiring were 7 times. So they'd have to set aside $700,000 to take care of a $100,000 loan. So the banks were very nervous. They didn't even like lending to themselves during this period of time. So we were filling a niche that was much needed. Take us through the process. Oh, I'm sorry, Bill. Take us through the process of designing your first product. Well, it was pretty easy. We only needed one product. Capital available for people to borrow. So it was pretty easy. We had people with self-directed retirement accounts that needed to invest their money and get a return on it. We also knew people that were in need of capital in order to purchase these properties, fix them up, and sell them at a profit. And we just put the two together, and that's called brokering. So we would broker the borrower and the lender together. We would get the origination fees, and the lender would get the interest rates. What had happened after a while is that as the loan amounts grew and the business picked up, it was a lot of work trying to put the pieces together. The people with the smaller amounts of money and the borrowers that needed that. And we decided to start a Regulation D fund where people could pool their money and we can loan out of it to make things much more. Um, God, I hate when I have, I'm sorry, cut. um, I had a blank spot. So we'd make it much more efficient in the way we brought capital in and dispersed capital. So, How did people find you uh, to loan money as your business grew? How did your borrowers contact you and get started? Well, we had to design our own database and forms where people could go online, fill out a form, and it would eventually turn into a loan application. And at the same time, we had uh, underwriting that we had to go through, as well as ordering the proper documentation, appraisals, that type of thing. And we were a small group, and so we really, in the beginning, we just designed our own database software through using a system called Podio, which is highly uh, efficient at customizing. The problem with highly customizable software is that it's not very user friendly. And so we kind of had to learn all that on our own. And eventually, as we grew, there were software companies out there that had products that uh, helped in the private lending industry. And then we gravitated to those. But, in the beginning, uh, you just didn't have the capital to spend on that kind of software, where this software, Podio, at the time was really free to use. And it's funny when you're growing a business, what you have to use, and then some of the stuff that makes you more efficient later, but it costs you a lot more money to uh, pick those things up and utilize them. Describe the process of launching the business. Well, the process was pretty easy. The business was already there. Our biggest concern is building up the clientele. So uh, I say that, but we were very fortunate. We had a mentor and somebody that we were doing business with that provided us with free office space, free internet, free phones, as long as we would help his clients with their financing needs. And so it was a good symbiotic relationship. It was almost like an incubator. So it was just Wendy and I in a single office. We ended up with a bookkeeper, so there was three of us in a single office. And then eventually we ended up renting space from him in his office instead of him just giving it to us for free. And as we grew, we ended up buying our own properties and setting those up. But if it wasn't for the mentor that we had and helping him provide his clients with financial products, it would have been very difficult to launch the business. So tell me about creating your own website and the initial online presence. Well, as you can probably imagine, the initial website was pretty rudimentary. It was just a couple of pages. But what the real key here is that our URL was the name of our business, but the URL is what we do and where we do it. So it was extremely SEO friendly. And again, Carolina hard money. If you're looking for hard money in North Carolina or South Carolina, we were always going to show up on the first page of the Google search. So that was really helpful. And then, on the website itself, the original website, it's just basically if you're borrowing money, click this tab and it would go right to the forms. At the time, we didn't really look for investors, so it was strictly set up for people borrowing money. And eventually, we upgraded our websites where we would add the investor tabs as well. So, talk to me about your how you financed your business, credit cards, loans, details of cost. Did you use any kind of Kickstarter or crowdfunding process? And the biggest lessons learned from starting, as well as the lessons learned from launch. Well, again, we're pretty fortunate. We used our own money. We didn't borrow any money. The business was already there. Our biggest concern was having a paycheck at the end of each month and making sure that we kept the lights on. Again, our rent was free in the beginning. All of our internet service and phones, all that was free. So there wasn't really a lot of overhead or money required to get the business started. We just had to show up and do the work. And so, yeah, we were blessed and very fortunate. We didn't have to use any of that. We didn't have to get any loans in our names. We just stepped in and started doing business, and it just grew. And we're very fortunate. So, since your launch, what has worked to attract and retain customers? What has worked to attract customers was our website. It was also that we are involved in meetup groups, real estate investor groups, where we can talk about our products, share the knowledge. And again, we weren't very salesy in the meetup groups. We're just giving them education on what's available. Um, Retaining clients is easy. Treat people like you want to be treated. It's a relationship business that we have. It's not a one-off product sale. This is a business where you want people to continue to come back to you, and you have to provide a good customer experience in order to do that. So it's all relationship based. So how are you doing today, and what does the future look like? Well, today we're doing a little bit less business than we did the previous year, thanks to COVID. Uh, Fortunately, our profit margin is higher than it was. We have learned to do more with less, thanks to COVID. The future is really bright with this company, as we are in the affordable single family housing market. And in any economy, you need two things: food and shelter. And we're helping to provide the shelter part of things. And we're staying in affordable housing because that is the most liquid type of real estate that you can own, buy, sell, or rent. So, what have been the most influential books, podcasts, or other resources that you can share? Dan, this is something that I'm going to have to pull off of my Audible account and write them down. So just leave a nice blank for me to add those. All right. So, do you have any advice for other entrepreneurs who want to get started or just starting out? Make sure you catch up on plenty of sleep before you get started. You're going to wear a lot of hats when you start your business. It's going to be long hours and not very much pay. And you're constantly going to be worried about whether you're going to have any income at the end of the week. That said, if you are an entrepreneur type and you're married or have a partner, make sure that that person has a good full-time job. Make sure that you have savings that you can live off of for a while. The vast majority of businesses, and again, we were very blessed that we had a free place to start this business. And if it's a service-related business that you're going to start, do it out of your garage. Don't go out and try and rent space. You always have time for that later. As long as you have a good internet connection and some decent lighting, if you're going to do any types of videos, you can do all this from your house. There's no need to add extra income on the other expenses on. The other thing I want to warn you about is we have a lot of friends in these industries who get started, everything looks great, and they ramp up and ramp up and ramp up, and next thing you know, they got this big machine that they constantly have to feed. Only grow as necessary. So don't go and ramp up unless it's absolutely necessary to ramp up. move at a pace that is cautious, is what I'd like to say. But again, most businesses, after 5 years, most businesses that start end up failing. And you don't want to get into that. So uh, don't be afraid, but be cautious about expansions. All right. So are you looking to hire for certain positions right now? That's a great question. All companies, including ours, are always on the lookout for good talent. And if you're good talent, you can always find a place somewhere. We're never going to look a gift horse in the mouth. You may not get a full-time job right away with us or anybody else, but if you find an industry that clicks with you, that you think you might find a place in, then do what you can to get in and learn as much as possible. We always like to say you earn while you learn. So if you have to get in with as an intern, just to figure out whether this might be a business that you're interested in or not. Most companies, including ours, are looking for people that are entrepreneurial. And what does that mean? Well, you're wanting eventually to open up your own business, but we want people that can think for themselves and are analytical and aren't afraid to ask the questions. Just like most businesses, excuse me, smaller businesses are going to want those types of talent. We certainly do. And while we're not actively looking to hire people, we will always take a look at the right talent.